Hello, friends. It's time for Talk for Dodge, the show that uncovers the stories behind the houses and the heart of our community. I'm Jeremiahjcondon.
And I'm Todd McCubbin, and today we are here with Jerry Fitzgerald. But before we talk to Jerry, let's just do some market facts.
Market facts or some fun real estate facts?
Let's do it.
All right. We got, did you know that there's a secret apartment on top of the Eiffel Tower?
I did know that.
Yeah.
Eiffel put it up there.
Kind of interesting. And for some of the people out there, I don't understand how this works, but I don't understand the metaverse and what it even is. But you can buy real estate in the metaverse to invest.
I've seen those, and I was going to do it, but you could buy
Jerry's
your
like,
house
no.
for a quarter. And I was going to do it. I was just going to buy my house for a quarter. You could buy like all of Fort Dodge for $10 when it first came out, and I just couldn't figure out how to get the money into it to get it done. So I actually tried that, and now I'm.
So you couldn't figure out how to get the money in.
Well, that was
and
when
you're
it was
our tech
first.
guy.
Yeah, I know. Not really. I'm techier than everybody else in the office, but not by much.
Which doesn't say much. We're still talking about fax machines.
That's right.
All right. The smallest home in Great Britain is 72 inches long, 120 inches wide, and 125 inches high. They call it the Quayside Cottage.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't even know what the square footage of that is like.
When I want to go see it. Oh, a cubic feet. It's like it's 1 cubic meter.
And who lives there?
I don't know. Maybe Mr. Quayside?
Little people.
So there's our fun facts for the day.
Awesome. I love it.
And just so everyone knows before we get started, we are watching the Iowa State game as well. So if you hear any jumping or hollering or thumping,
Yeah.
that's why.
You'll know what's going on. We should be done before it's over. It's noon now, so and this comes out today, so we can hopefully
And
get
Iowa
some
State
good
just made a
comments.
big comeback, so that's good.
That's right. So Jerry, can you just tell us about yourself?
84 years old, soon to be 85, born before World War II, barely. And we lived, but if you drew a triangle between Pioneer, that's in Webster County, and Clare, and St. Patrick's on the Lizard Church, which is not there now, we lived in that triangle most of my early youth. And 2 farms.
Okay.
I mean, one and then another. And at that time, most people were economically struggling. It wasn't, was post-Depression era.
Well, you were born before, so you were born during the Great Depression. And
1941.
yeah. So, and then World War II happened, which brought us out of the Great Depression.
Right. And, it took a while. In farming, they argue that in 1948, I don't know if this is true, by the way, but I mean, people used to say 1948 there was pricing that was adequate they could put in law and, try to make it work legislatively, farming. But we were little kids, so we really didn't know. But we lived there for, 6 years, thereabouts, and then our mother died, and we wound up being shipped around for a year or so, and then wound up via Clare to orphanage in Sioux City, and then later, sometime, I think it was 12, we came to Fort Dodge.
Okay.
So when you were 12, what was Fort Dodge like?
A lot of energy, very high energy town. And
Cool.
It was very much a blue-collar town. And our dad, who had farmed, came to, got a job after our mother died. That was the end of farming. And so he went to, got a job through truck farming, basically with other farmers, and then eventually at Tobin's, which was a meatpacking plant, later became Hormel's. And he worked there till he died. He was 55 when he died.
Wow. So one of the things that always, and we talk quite often, I see you a
Right.
lot. You tell us about some of your Peace Corps experiences, and once you went to Iowa State, right?
Yes, graduated from Iowa State. Went to Iowa Central and then Iowa State.
So once you got out, you did that. You decided, the Peace Corps was the thing for you. Why did you choose the Peace Corps? How did that become about?
It evolved. First of all, it was a time when, if you look back, JFK was president elected, and he had captured the imagination of a lot of young people, a lot of people. Not that he won Iowa, he didn't. But he came to Fort Dodge, and I was in the crowd along with a lot of people. But he caught the imagination of a lot of people. He was a new, very young, which was unusual at the time, guy who was trying to be president. And I actually watched him on the 1956 National Convention on a little rounded tube of a television when he almost got the nomination as the vice president, was thrown open to the convention. I didn't know anything about him, but what I knew was he was an Irish and he was Catholic at the time. I was very young. And I remember thinking, as I can remember to this day, my God, who is this guy? He's young. He's this, he's that. Mm-hmm. And that was in the first day of this nominating process. The second day, he didn't get it because they recognized one guy versus another, and that turned the votes around. It was probably the best thing that happened to him, as it turned out, because then his brother, who went with the then nominee, President, Vice President, Adlai Stevenson, who lost, of course, overwhelming, with them on their campaign to help them all the time, which laid the plan for his run for president in 1960, which he captured the imagination. Well, anyway, one of the things he did, of course, he challenged the race to the moon and so on and so forth, things like that. But one of the things he did was create the Peace Corps. And this idea that you could serve to help others and not just ask for something, but how you could do something for others. And that caught me, and along with other people, a lot of people, imagination. And I was looking around at how to do that, frankly, all the time I was going to Iowa Central and Iowa State. And I got my degree in engineering from Iowa State. But even before I got it, I was looking at some alternative way to do that. And I can remember December, about 3 weeks after Kennedy was assassinated, a guy came through one of those minimal required classes, your last semester of school or second last. And he said, tonight we'll be at the student union, and if you want to interested, come out. And another guy and I went there and took a test. Well, it was just a perfunctory thing, I think, to see if you were interested. But in any case, that led to me going to Peace Corps shortly after I graduated.
That's cool. And you were in Bolivia, correct?
Yes. Bolivia. Went June 22nd, 1964. Flew, first time I'd ever been on a plane in my life. First that day, the prop plane out of here, Minneapolis, changed to a 707 jet, which I'd never been anything before. Saw probably Mount Hood, I don't know, near Portland. So we sat down for a few minutes while they picked up passengers and then flew up to Seattle, and we were in Seattle for our training. Came back home, take care of business here, and then went through Puerto Rico for a few weeks of kind of immerse you in some Spanish culture, language, etc., and then went on to Bolivia, which was interesting because within the first week there were attempted uprising against the government, and they almost didn't let us in. We were confined to our hotel, which was right outside. I mean,
you look out the window and see everything going on.
Yes. Yes.
It's kind of scary.
Oh, that's so neat to think about. And, the mid-'60s in Bolivia, I can only imagine, because even there now, it's a third world country.
It was competing with Haiti at the time on a per capita basis for being the two poorest countries in Latin America.
Wow.
Kind of went back and forth.
And what was your job while you were in the Peace Corps?
Well, the first, it was supposed to be public health, but, you kind of get there and you got to move around to whatever they put you in. But they put another guy and I I had an engineering degree. The other guy had a surveying, so we were similarities. And there was a construction of a small, very small schoolhouse desired. And they already had one room, and these are adobe. This is not anything fancy. I mean, there's no plumbing, no electricity, nothing, just a room. And they wanted to extend it to make it a little larger not a larger room than they had, and we got involved in trying to help them do that. And that was our project we worked on. It was on the shore of Lake Titicaca, very poor area. I don't think it was an incorporated town. It was called Jocopampa. And we went back and forth between there and La Paz. And you get to La Paz by riding in the back of a truck. People, they'd throw everything on top, and they're all on top of the truck riding, cold. 12,500 foot altitude.
Oh,
And
it was hard to breathe up there.
well, we were young and in
Yeah.
much better shape than now. But it was fascinating. Actually, one of the most important things, decision-wise, for me in my adult life. It's, of course, next to getting married and all that. But
Right.
I mean, in terms of just career, I don't regret it a bit. It was one of the most satisfying and truly learning opportunities in my life, actually.
That's cool to think about. You've told me about the stories, and we've, kind of go back and forth, and it's just neat to know somebody that did that, especially in those early days. And I didn't realize that Kennedy started the Peace Corps.
It was actually put out there on the campaign trail by Humphrey, who was run against Kennedy first, but it was not a huge deal. But Kennedy actually started it first as a pilot with his brother-in-law, Sergeant Shriver. I remember when I got my first letter after I took that test, I'll call it, which was the first of many steps you had to go through, as it turned out, at the time. And I checked to see, was that real ink on that signature? I thought, I didn't know about auto pens and things like that.
Did they have auto pens?
I don't know.
Mid-'60s.
They had
That's
something.
awesome.
Oh, yeah. That's so neat.
So when you got back, you wanted to get into politics.
Not right away.
Okay.
I mean, I was aware of politics because of when I was on this project, this other guy and I, we eventually got recruited because of trying to find funds and everything else for this project. There was a neighboring town about a couple of miles away called Saiguapampa. That's actually on the Google map today. I cannot find Jocopampa, and it doesn't exist as a practical matter. But they wanted a total school built. None of these are really big. But in our efforts to get these two projects built, we would go into La Paz, the capital city, which is 5 hours to 6 hours by top of a truck, to knock on any door we could to find any kind of help. Well, everything was shut down for a whole lot of reasons involving foreign aid programs in the Bolivian government at the time. We didn't understand all that at first. And there was one program called Community Development Program, which had started a few months earlier. And they couldn't get engineers. And just coincidentally, as I'm knocking on doors for aid to this school,
Here's
I
an
had
engineer.
an engineering degree. Now, I never really used it that extensively. I don't want to suggest that, but it was, relatively primitive in terms of the type of buildings and so on. But the guys who built them knew what they were doing. And I learned more from them than I did from any engineering book at the time. But it was a fascinating experience. But because of the effort on those two projects, before they got completed, I got recruited into this national program. And pretty soon we're helping to build this program. After a couple of months, I worked out there, and then I went into this program. And those two projects were two of the first three projects that got approval in the national program. So I felt good about it. Both schoolhouses. So they were both... I don't know, successful. But I went back and looked actually a few months ago on Google to find Saiguapampa and Jocopampa. They were the two towns. And weren't towns, really. I mean, they're farming community. These are tiny farms in relative to the kind we have. And anyway, it was, I did find the Saiguapampa. It exists, but not Jocopampa, at least as far as Google was concerned. But it was relative to our lifestyle, incredible poverty.
Yeah.
But
so that led you into what did you do when you got out of the Peace Corps that led you eventually into politics?
Well, first of all, when we were down there, we saw the impact of policy decisions on foreign aid. One person versus another, and there were people that came down to see this new program, and it wasn't our idea. Obviously, we were just working on it, but listening to these people, you could see National Congress or the State Department, whichever one you want to stop at to look at in terms of policy making. It became something that we became aware of and followed with interest what people would do in that vein. Well, when I left Peace Corps, I was actually, not formally, but I wound up working with a couple other guys in what we called the Projects Division, which was where we work with the communities out around the country, and including in R2. But we, when I left 2 years after I got there, we trained this guy to take my job over, and we took a week of vacation on our way back through Machu Picchu and all those places.
You got to see all the cool things.
Oh, well, it was more primitive now then than it is now. I mean, we thought it's really special, which it really is. It is something that everybody should see, but now you need a traffic jam person to keep the people bumming into each other. It wasn't that way then, but it was part of. I went back. Short version is I went back to Washington D.C. and the guy who ran the program. He was an AID guy, not a Peace Corps guy. He was leaving about the same time, and I met him, stayed with his family and him, and went to the State Department for a month. And that was not a job. It was just that I did that before I came home, and learned a lot about the inner workings of that world. And it all, at the time, I was fascinated by it and wanted to have an impact on it, but I never thought in terms of politics per se. But after we all came back, we said, where are we going to go to school? What are we going to do when we get out? And, of course, I thought foreign service. I'll go in the foreign service. So where would we go? Well, what we wanted were, we had our undergraduate degrees, but get into something, thought I learned how to think with engineering, and then get something that would involve the community development label. There were 2 schools, Missouri, Arizona State, and that used it in there. I don't know the significance of that, but at the time we thought it was important. And then get a PhD in political science. I didn't stay for the latter part. I did get the master's at Missouri. But most of the work actually I did was in political science and history related to where I wanted to go work. Well, 1968 was a dramatic year in politics. And I got hooked, and I decided I was going to take a summer off. That was what I thought. And work in this campaign of this guy who was governor of Iowa. I didn't know him. He was running for the U.S. Senate. And he actually was looking later to be a potential presidential candidate. But short version is I thought, I'll take one summer off. It's a long story, but I wound up getting hired for a job that you couldn't just do the summer. You had to do the fall, too. So I took a semester off, and that got me hooked as an organizer. I just didn't accept it at first. Went back for my later, another year of work before I actually got recruited then because of that to work in a lot of campaigns, which I did as an organizer, not as a candidate, around the country. And
what was your first time running for a political office? What was it for?
1972.
For what position?
State legislature.
Okay.
And I got to meet people, even though I wasn't literally living at home at the time because I was traveling all the time. And I was single, too. That made a big difference.
That helps.
I had a lot of flexibility. And for other people, the price was right because I didn't know that I could do these things for much money. But but I met a lot of people in Webster County as I worked in Iowa, politically, I mean. And my brothers, 2 youngest brothers, were still here. Anyway, the short version is the state did a redistricting, a last-minute redistricting overseen by the Iowa Supreme Court. Because of that, all the lines were redrawn, and there was nobody in that district in which I had grown up. And there was somebody who was representing it, but he lived a block outside of the district. I thought that mattered. Yeah. The lines were drawn, so just, it was, as I say, the luck of the draw. But short version is I decided to run, and I called all the candidates, the existing legislators, and they kind of said, they encouraged me. I was naive enough to believe they all meant it. So I shouldn't say it that way. But I wound up, one of them actually ran again. He was the incumbent. I don't want to get into all that, but and I won. And my brothers, of course, helped me a lot. Yeah. And my father, who'd passed away 4 years earlier, was well known in the world he worked in and resided in Fort Dodge, and so that clearly made a difference. And I had worked all my life in construction and Hormel's, paid my way through college working at Hormel's, which was, for a lot of guys at that time,
Yeah, they did that.
lifesaver.
So now you're a state legislator.
And then
What was
I was
that, about 72?
73, January 73, was sworn in, served for 6 years. The last 4, I was elected majority leader. Actually, the end of my second year.
Wow.
Tell us about the legislature back then. So we talk about how divisive politics is anymore, but back then it was divisive, but it wasn't.
Well, there's this formal structure. You have political parties, and the theory of why they were set up. They weren't set up in the Constitution. They were once we got into the democracy of the final Constitution, you had certain people in those original fathers thought then they should be this way and
Some
that
kind of
way, and pretty soon
competition.
that became the sort of the way to keep people honest, because somebody had to have an interest in challenging whoever was in power, regardless of which one was in power. And that started that way. And of course, as I think President Washington, when he decided not to run, which by the way was an incredibly important decision for our country.
Yes, it was.
He leaned one way, but he didn't like political parties at all. And he spoke to that a couple times, I think, in his career, maybe more than a couple privately, and because he talked about the negative side of it. But the reason fundamentally was because of this. And of course, what the two parties represent is floating and changing constantly, not daily, but over time. And it's just a way to hold people honest in theory, but it has a downside if you get districts that are not representative of the broader population. And that forces, in today's climate, it forces people to pay attention to the primary more than the general, which is where the bulk of the people get a chance to vote. And but back then, to get back to your question, it was still that competition. Having said that, you could reach across the aisle. I mean, there were ways to do it, sometimes based on personality, sometimes on shared ideas, shared values, different things. They weren't all lined up one way or the other. And, there were, now you look at this and say, well, rural areas of Iowa don't have any Democratic representation, and the reverse, for the same thing. And back then, there were farmers who were Democratic, just like there were urban people who were Republican. There wasn't one mold for each party. Not that there is today, but it's not as obvious.
It's super obvious when you see the maps by county of the majorities and how, Reddit gets in the rural areas and how.
Right. It wasn't, there were tendencies because of various histories of the state, usually based on religion and things like that more than on politics when it started. It really, if you look at you could look at Iowa back then, and you could say, I think the largest number of immigrants were German. Just as pick one example. And my grandfather, my mother's side, was born in Germany, so I can say I got both sides of that ethnic divide, if you will. And forget him, but the point is, when you were German, the largest immigrant population in Iowa historically, if you were Lutheran, you were Republican. If you were Catholic, you were Democrat. I don't know why, but, somewhere along the line.
It's just the group you were hanging out with.
Yeah. And I don't mean that was an exact thing, but it was more the case back then. And the physical community that you grew up in, Clare was literally a enclave of Irish in its original. It's not so much now, but back when it started, named after County Clare, I assume, in Ireland. And Barnum, same thing. They were sister cities, so to speak. They fought with each other all the time until the outside looked at them. But it was, you could find reasons to work across the aisle. And I actually enjoyed my freshman term in the legislature. Actually most gratifying. I didn't have any leadership responsibilities. I could float, do whatever, and it worked out well. And when you get the leadership jobs, you're just consumed with the things you got to do, which are not always, generally 90% of the time they're not reported because they're difficult to figure out because it's mostly what you don't see that much of.
It's what happens.
Yeah.
Behind.
But it's a fascinating world. I enjoyed it. I got to admit, I like the challenge of it. I loved the challenge of it.
So then in 1978, you decided to
go
for it.
Well, I actually didn't right away, but party chairman was actually already out there
Someone
running.
pushed you in?
No, he didn't want me in. I shouldn't say that, but well, I mean, it's human nature. And I got in, and I thought the bill, the odds were neither one of us would win in the general. I shouldn't say that we wouldn't. We would have a chance, but it was very difficult. It was at the height of Bob Ray's popularity. I mean, he was actually liked even by those who opposed him. I mean, I liked him, frankly. And we got to be friends. We actually got to spend a lot of time together afterwards. And later, after I became a lobbyist, which was many years later, he became the mayor of Des Moines at the time when I was a lobbyist for them. And so we would joke about it all the time. We did a lot of things together, and he asked us to do a couple things. One time there were 3 of us lobbyists meeting with him on something. This was all stuff you did for free. And I remember we were passing each other on the way to the bathroom to come out, and I said, "You know why we're doing this, Governor?" I said, "Because we like you." And there were two of the 3 of us at the time were Democrats. And,
that's cool.
It just kind of, you really did get along. I could even go a lot farther behind the scenes. Guys who didn't like me officially and privately.
Would you hang out and talk?
Oh, they would actually agree to, that's a long term, but one of my elections said they would endorse me publicly. I said, "No, you better wait till the outcome because you could get burned."
Yeah, wait till the last minute. So talk about lobbying. You did that for a lot of years, and you did a lot of things.
It's a fascinating world. Actually, people tried to recruit me into it after I left the legislature after the 78 campaign, and I said, "No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that." And your mental picture is kind of what you see in the media. It's a pejorative term that's used often, and it can be that way, but it doesn't have to be. And you do this one guy who literally kept pushing me to do it. He said, "Jerry, it's what you did when you were in the legislature. It is when you were a leader." He said, "I mean, you got to figure out what the issues are, how to make them work together, bring the personalities together, and find a solution that will get in the House 51 votes minimum, and in the Senate 26. And those are the magic numbers of the mathematics of politics in the Iowa legislature. And then, of course, you got to think, well, whatever you do on one side, how will that play, not just in the Senate, for example, as a whole, but in the subcommittee? Where will the bill be assigned? I mean, you anticipate everything you can, which is not everything. And then, of course, personalities and other things get mixed in, all of that. It's a very complex world. It's a high-stress world, but it's exciting. I mean, you can actually affect the outcome of things. I don't mean control them, but, it's you can be the person that finds the answers a lot of times, because the ideas of what coalition of ideas can be put together is actually a very fascinating process.
Were you able to pick who you worked for? So if you had your heart said one thing, you could say, this isn't something I want to take on.
Well, I started lobbying on March 9th of 1985, which was 7 years after I left the legislature. And I had turned down, I had been offered, and I turned them down before, and this time I said yes. And in the next that was 85, but the next 7 years, I had turned down 9 that wanted me to lobby for them. And I had a conflict. Yep. And that was my way out, because some of them I liked personally, but I didn't want, we were what we called contract lobbyists. You worked for different ones, not just one. Some people just go what they call in-house, and that's their full-time job. And I'm not sure what I knew, but I liked doing it, and it creates a lot more anxiety, a lot more issues, a lot more stress. But if you can find the way through, the kind of thought process is very similar to what I had to do when I was majority leader, just in a different context. And I enjoyed it. I didn't really want to retire, but age kind of said somewhere around 80 it's time. And,
Do you have one bill or one thing that you were most proud of while you were being?
no, most of them that I was proud of, people don't even know I decided. I remember my first bill where I realized it wasn't my bill. I mean, I was just one of whoever, ultimately 56 votes for it. It was on the floor, and some guys that I liked were for it, and I was for it conceptually, but I didn't know the details. I didn't work on the subcommittee or committee or anything like that. But I remember walking in. It was almost 9 o'clock when I got there. I was single then. I came out, stayed out late, worked late, because you're working every night. I mean, everything, you just don't see it. It's out, you're finding people, and you get together and so on. Well, it was one of those nights, and I came in, and these guys were talking about this bill that they were for, and they said, I'm worried this might not pass. And I'm just listening to them, and they kept agonizing, and I said, well, shouldn't we do something? They looked at me, and I didn't say much, and I said it a second time after listening to them for another few minutes. And the third time, I just walked away, and then I got a legal pad and went and found some guys to help me count votes. I didn't know if we decided the outcome, but I did know what we set up. I said, it takes a while to explain it when you get into that, but we set up a method to get 2 people in each of the 4 quadrants and get bipartisan group doing it. And I didn't know if we decided the outcome, but we created momentum for that, and I knew that. And then the next time, I had the sheets all made up.
You knew what to do ahead of time.
Yeah, and I can remember the first bill where we changed. There were 3 days of debate, large number. That's a large amount of time for any given bill, but there was somewhat controversial one, bipartisan, totally. And what we did changed the outcome. We lost everything that mattered on the first 2 days, and on the last day, we won everything. And it turned around the bad vote of the day before that was written in the paper about how bad, in effect, it was. I can remember the author of that, and I can remember it was up on the top corner of page 5 in the Des Moines Register. And we turned that around that day and then got to the last amendment, 48 to 47. Got to have 51, remember, for the final vote. And we didn't, and I can remember every vote from 48 to 51. And in the journal, it'll say 52, because the speaker, who was not on her side, switched right at the last minute, because his governor wasn't on he was on the opposite side of his governor, in effect, on that coalition of interests. And that one was the one that I realized you can make a difference in this place by what you do. Not what you said. I just asked one. There were speeches all the time. I never got in one speech. I just asked a point of information once. I had a purpose in doing that, and that was it. And so most of what you got done didn't have to be by giving a talk. Most of the time, the people who talk are when frankly, the TV cameras came in, and we would all groan because we knew
somebody's got to get their face out there.
They would be up talking, and the cameras would put them on the news that night. That's what they wanted. Might not change much, though, as far as the actual legislation. But I remember the first coalition bill, which had to do with the repeal of the personal property tax. Not a priority of mine when we got in there, but the Senate passed it, and what we did in the House changed it and worked together in a bipartisan coalition. We got a better version. And I can remember the third one. Then it goes on. But now, my first year, one that we got more attention, which is Brushy Creek, but not because of what we ultimately did, but what we did then. We had an amendment. A guy next to me, just sat next to me. He had a lake in his project. I had a lake in mine. We worked together to get an amendment, which we didn't have success at this committee level because he was on the committee, but I wasn't. But we were minority. Keep in mind, the first 2 years, we were not in the majority, and we were freshmen on top of it. And we put together a coalition, and we missed by 3 votes when the vote was taken. And but they realized we crossed party lines with it, caused an extensive debate. And they came to us before the next session and said, can't we work something out? We did. We got Brushy Creek and Vogel Lake funded. That was the good news. Exactly the amount they told us to need to get them done. And then lawsuits started, and all this opposition started. So then, as a lobbyist, 10 years later, I got called, and I wound up, we got it. He was then speaker, and I was a lobbyist. And we got those two, that Brushy Creek done then. And that was codified to the point of literally every detail in the bill, the way they had to build it, everything, to make sure they didn't. And there was something that DNR then wanted and some opposition groups wanted. And if you don't do ours, they won't get theirs. So we worked out a deal. That was publicly one that got noticed a little more, but there was collective bargaining for public employees was a big deal for me as a freshman. I was the co-form manager of the bill. We weren't supposed to win, and we did. And
I just love how like a Fort Dodge area boy can make it all the way up the ranks, almost get in the governor's seat, and then still do all the lobbying, which I have to believe that everything that you did would have benefited the Fort Dodge area and, like for all of Iowa.
Somebody anyway.
Yeah, somebody.
Well, I actually think about that a lot because I have been very lucky. I admit it. My parents were good people. They clearly loved us. I was the oldest. Maybe my wife and I, she said, you probably got treated better than your, just because you're the oldest. And not because they had any money. They did not. My mother was well educated for her era. She was a nurse. She was a good student in high school and a nurse. My dad didn't go past 8th grade. They begged him to do it. He didn't want to. And his culture was he had a really tough upbringing. And but he was bright. And but they both cared for us. Literally the house we lived in at the time our mother died didn't have any indoor plumbing. It had stove that you cooked on and kept warm with. You lifted those grates out and put the log in there. And
that's work.
Well, we didn't know it. It was just
what life was.
Yeah, but I've thought about that a lot, mainly probably because of when our mother died, we wound up within a year, we were in an orphanage for 4 or some years. And there are a lot of people there, some they're not alive now, the ones that I was closest to. But we all had this sort of, you have to do something to help people in circumstances like that, which motivated me a lot in politics. And I took a friend of mine who just passed away a few months ago, that he was 2 years older than me. At the time, he was 2 years older. He was a big kid. He was in the orphanage, too, and he's from Fort Dodge. He just passed away late last year. And he had never been able to get up there. He tried it. He was driving trucks for a while, and he tried to find it, but those hills up there in Sioux City, or the Les Hills and all that, it's very difficult for a big truck to drive around. Well, anyway, I said, okay. So we went there together and took pictures, and it's not there anymore, but the concrete, literally, of the area where we called the girls' playground area is still there beside this giant retirement home. And the hill is still there. Catholic Charities are at the bottom. They weren't there when we were there. They were built there later. And it was all run by nuns. Sister Claudette.
Still remember.
Oh, I remember her name. I can remember. She was a positive one. Sister Theona, rigorous, strict one, but fair, eminently fair. There were a couple that we didn't care for. They applied the corporal punishment.
Yep.
But it was interesting. And the fact that I think about that when I was in Bolivia. I think about it when my brothers and I would occasionally talk about it at great length. And when Mike O'Connor, who just passed away a few months ago, I was telling you about, we'd talk about it. And it was a sort of a community of feelings about stuff like that. And I do think, I've been lucky. You talk about kid from, and others, clearly, we're not the only ones by any means. But I look at your Jim Kesterson, where he started in East End of Fort Dodge, and he's a lot younger than me, of course, but I can remember places in Fort Dodge where guys went for, mentioned the Chesterfield, which is out in the East End there. I mean, back then, it's still there, but had different people and everything. But the lure of that, basically a working class background when things went well, but they weren't always going well. And to be able to do that, it's you can do it in this country.
So would you have any advice or tips to any young people who would want to get involved with politics or public service?
Learn of what they are. Don't try to be a lot about, just don't try to figure out how to make people like you for superficial things. Figure out what you care about in life. Work hard at what you do. I know those cliches. I can tell you that even though I don't practice as an engineer, the rigorous nature of that meant a lot. And whatever you do, try to do your best and care about other people. Don't just do things for selfish reasons. Try to figure out something beyond yourself. Just living for yourself is not enough. And I've been very lucky. I've got a wife who puts up with me. And I didn't get married until I was 34. And we have 4 kids, all of whom are in the various towns around the center of Iowa now, but which gives us a lot of grandkids, and now we're dealing with great-grandkids. Hard to, we're just middle-aged, so we don't think, I'd say that.
Well, I'm middle-aged, too.
Yeah, but I count mine longer than you.
Oh, shoot.
But
It's how old you are at heart. That's all
right.
that matters.
But I have been lucky, I admit it. Not wealthy, but lucky, and I've enjoyed it. I don't regret it. There are mistakes. We all make mistakes. As they say in those many cliches, it isn't how well you do every time. It's when you have a thing that doesn't work out for you, how do you respond? How do you get back up, and what do you do about trying to go forward? And a lot of people give up, and I think that's a mistake. And I loved my time in public office. I actually liked doing the job. I enjoyed that part of it. Campaigns were harder for me. I was an introvert, typical science nerd kid. But I enjoyed it very much.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you for being on. And if you think of some more stories you want to tell, we can have you on again sometime. If there's something specific you want to have on here, because it's wonderful listening to you and
It's great.
and hearing all these different things about you and how, tying back to Fort Dodge after being in Bolivia, after being all these other places, doing all these things. And you're still here having coffee with me on Saturdays.
Yeah, well, we have a good coffee. We have a tremendously intellectual conversations.
Yes, we do. And never have a quorum, so we can't make any
Yes,
decisions.
right. That's important, very important.
Awesome.
Love
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you guys
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
That's a wrap at today's episode of Talk Fort Dodge.
Stay connected with us on social media and join us next time as we continue exploring Fort Dodge's stories through the lens of 2 lifelong Dodgers. I'm Jeremiah Condon.
And I'm Todd McCubbin, and this is Talk Fort Dodge.
This podcast is produced by Spin Market and Digital. Located in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Spin Market's highly skilled team can help you increase your market by updating your website, improving SEO, designing advertisements, and producing podcasts that will grab the attention of your market. Contact Spin Market today for all your digital marketing needs at digitalagent@spinmarket.com or call us at 515-302-8026. And to learn more, visit our website at www.spinmarket.com. That's digitalagent@spinmarket.com or 515-302-8026. Or visit our website at www.spinmarket.com.